Switching from bikes to cars to metros, China has always been searching for an efficient solution to the transportation problem. Gas-powered automobiles won't be a permanent solution with 1.3 billion people and a deteriorating environment. However, recently, from around February to July this year, there's a new player in the game. Because now we have bike shares, which are bikes that can be rented for a short period of time at just about every single corner in China with a cell phone that has a camera, an app, and internet. In less than 5 months, startup companies has been popping up all over China with their own signature colored bikes, with companies like Mobike and OFO leading the way, with 11 million bikes on the street and raising around $2.1 billion of funding. I figured that I should talk about how these bikes work and whether it might be a permanent solution to the biking dilemma in China. In order to give you a comprehensive look at how different bikes operate, I'm going to talk about 3 kinds of bikes. First is a bike that's operated by the city government, and the second kind of bike is the OFO bike, and third one is the Mobike. In order to use the city-operated bike, you need to pay $60 of deposit with a valid ID, and you will get a card. Using that card, you can unlock bicycles at designated docks all around the city. So the OFO and the Mobike bicycles kind of operate in the same way. You download an app to your cell phone, you pay like a $30 to $50 deposit, and then there's no designated docks, so you can just scan the QR code on each bicycle and it will automatically unlock, or it will give you a code that you can unlock the bicycle. Now let's talk about how these bikes compare in terms of the quality of the bike.
So in terms of how these bikes look, the city-operated bikes look a lot like a normal on the market urban bike. Everything else is the same except that there is a place to lock the bike into the dock. The OFO bike is a little different in terms of the braking system. Instead of exerting friction on the tire of the bike to brake, the OFO bike kind of limits the movement of the chain to stop the bike. Therefore, the braking system is a little less responsive. Mobike is the one that's a little different. Some of the bikes doesn't have chains and a lot of the tires looks very interesting. These intricate designs actually eliminate the need of constant maintenance of these bikes. And I think what Mobike has done very much showcases the mentality that this generation of startup companies represent. I think it is a goal to develop new and interesting technology while trying to protect the environment that pushes the bike share phenomenon forward. So in order to test these bikes, I rode off them on a route that I traveled the most during the summer. That is from my house to the gym. In terms of the riding experience, the city-operated bike gives you a very smooth ride. Because it's repaired at a greater frequency, the braking systems are responsive, the seats are very comfortable, and overall it's just a great bike. The OFO bike, however, it requires little improvement because the braking systems are not so responsive. And for some of the OFO bikes, you feel like you're riding at a very high gear, however, you're not going very far. The Mobike gives you an interesting riding experience because of the lack of chains and the interesting design of the tires. The Mobike is kind of harder to maneuver and the brakes are not as responsive as the city-operated bikes. After taking a look at the riding experience of these bikes, here's what I think about the biking situation right now in China. Hold on. So here is my comprehensive review of the biking situation. So first of all, the city-operated bikes. Because it's operated by the city at a much smaller scale and it receives city's funding, it gets repaired at a much larger frequency compared to the OFO and the mobike, which are operated on a nation scale. Therefore, the city-operated bikes gives you a much smoother riding experience. I think it's a little more comfortable than the other two bikes and it goes relatively faster. One of the biggest drawbacks of the city-operated bikes is that you can only get it at designated docks. It means that it might not always be available to you. You may need to walk a little bit in order to get to your bike, or you need to park it somewhere else and walk to your destination. And because lack of availability of the city-operated bikes, despite it has been out for a couple of years, it doesn't reach the same level of popularity compared to the OFO and mobike. Moving on, I think OFO and mobike shares a similar ways of operation and underlying ideal with each other. Both coming out like 3 or 4 months ago, OFO and mobike has reached a level of popularity that has never been seen before in the business of cycling in China. Because both of these companies utilizes this generation's reliance on cell phones, they incorporated that reliance into their product, making their product as available, as flexible to their customers as it can be. And I think that's why OFO and mobike went viral this quickly. I think OFO and mobike incorporates the idea that the product of this generation should be built to last long instead of just constantly needing to be repaired. Especially mobike with their new invention of chainless bicycles or the interesting design of their tires that doesn't need to be inflated very often. OFO and mobike really pushes the boundary of biking in China with their sheer competition. So to sum up, despite the slightly better quality that the city-operated bike has, OFO and mobike really represents this generation of shareable technology. Show the public what they can do with a new way of transportation. Because of the deteriorating environment, OFO and mobike really incorporates the idea of protecting the environment with people's daily action, with changing their way of transportation into their product. And by incorporating that ideal, that mentality, OFO and mobike, I believe, will become more and more popular and having greater success in their product in the future.
So China has had a pretty interesting history with bikes, and the working knowledge forum has had this little flow chart about the history of bikes in China. It was a little small, let's make it a little bigger. Starting off with the walking era, which is from around 1880s to the 1940s, and the cycling era from 1950s to 1990s, the auto era from in the 2000s, and the personal era, which is just the recent past 2 years, 2016 and 2017. So the walking era is when my grandparents first had any idea what a bike is. And at that time, bikes are referred to as touring horses. They are also a token of identity at that time. In the cycling era, from 1950 to 1990s, bikes still slowly start to evolve in China, and people get more and more familiar with the concept of bikes, and bikes become more and more popular all over the country. As my grandpa told me that you need a ticket. You buy the ticket with money and you use the ticket to exchange for a bike. It's not that easy to get a ticket. Even if you have money, you need to have some relationship with the people in charge of handing out these tickets to go exchange bikes. So you need a ticket and plus relationship to get a bike. And slowly evolving that at around 1990s, everybody in China has a bicycle. In the 2000s, the popularity of bikes slowly started to fade away, and cars starting to be introduced and becoming more and more popular and more of a token of identity than is. According to statistics provided by The Guardian, 60% of the bikes in Beijing started to fade away and are being replaced by automobiles.
And in 2016 and 2017, people are slowly starting to realize the importance of riding bicycles again. Recently, there has been a lot of different opinions on whether the bike share phenomenon might be beneficial for the society or not. Therefore, in order to get the perspective of different people on the subject of bike share, I read around 6 articles from major sites like the New York Times and the Guardian. And here are some of the overwhelming pros and cons that these sources mentioned about the bike share phenomenon. One of the major upside of the bike sharing phenomenon is that it pushes the people's awareness of protecting the environment in an unprecedented speed. According to a data provided by Mobike on the World Economic Forum, Mobike claims that its users has ridden their bike for about 2.5 billion kilometers. That's around 1.6 billion miles. Also 62,000 times around the circumference of the Earth. In addition, Mobike also claims that the amount of bike use equals to taking off around 170,000 cars from the street. The United States Environmental Protection Agency claims that every car emits about 4.7 metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. And that will be around 800,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide for 170,000 cars. According to another research, China puts around 9.8 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. The 800,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide not emitted because of the use of Mobike will be around 0.008% of the total amount of carbon dioxide emitted in China every year. According to another data provided by CNBC, OFO and Mobike users ride about 15 million kilometers every day. And if we assume that every rider is ride about a kilometer, that would be 15 million kilometers a day. By riding about 15 million kilometers a day, the OFO and the Mobike users will achieve the 2.5 billion kilometers claimed earlier by Mobike in less than about 50 days. And that's be around 5,600,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide can be prevented from being emitted to the atmosphere every year. That's around 0.056 of the total amount of carbon dioxide emitted by China every year. In that case, if the bike share phenomenon continues to grow and more people start to use their bikes, the bike share companies will push the act of environmental protection to an unprecedented level. One of the biggest reasons for the success of the bike share program, the reason for the bike share program to be so popular is the flexibility that it provides for the customer. As the New York Times writers puts it, the bike share program solves the problem of the last mile. What the writers mean by the last mile problem is usually the trip that is in between established transportations. Like before, if you want to get from point A to point B, you can take the metro. But between point A to the metro station and the metro station to point B, you will need to walk like a mile or so. Now, the first mile or the last mile that you need to travel from point A to point B, usually by walking before, is easily solved by the flexibility that the bike share program provides. However, there are also plenty of problems that these companies like OFO and Mobike need to address before the bike share program can be more publicly accepted. For example, now because the shareable bikes, the bike shares promoted by OFO and Mobikes and other companies doesn't have designated docks for parking of these bikes. The bikes are sometimes just randomly placed on the streets, which blocks a lot of the normal traffic on the streets of China. In that case, some of the bikes are just pushed over and left in the middle of the sidewalk without anybody taking the responsibility to put the bike where is a more acceptable place to park. In some extreme cases, the act of vandalism has been taken to a whole new level. Some of the bikes are, for no reason, thrown into the lakes and left for government officials or people from each companies to fish them out of the lake. Furthermore, because of the technology of smart locks that's linked with Bluetooth or the internet has not been developed for a long time, has not been matured enough, the problem with thievery has been a major concern for the companies that is operating these shareable bikes. So for some companies that are operating at a smaller scale, the problem with the lack of security of the locks can usually ends up in bankruptcy of the company because of the majority of their bikes are being stolen. Another concern with the popularity of the bike share phenomenon is that a lot of startup companies can be blindly following some of the bigger companies like OFO and Mobike into the business of public bike shares. And because of the lack of ability to compete with some of these bigger companies that are putting out bikes at a tremendous speed, these smaller companies that are just starting up can be outcompeted so fast that the companies can go bankrupt in like a month or two. Some of the new startup companies can experience extreme hardship due to the competitiveness of the market of bike shares, and most of them are caused by the popularity of this phenomenon. The companies are blinded from the competitiveness of the market by the popularity that the bike share phenomenon has gotten in the past few months. As the New York Times writer has concluded about the success of bike shares, there are three main factors contributing to the success. Well, first of all, it's a lot of funding trying to find homes. There's a lot of findings available in the market. The most important factor is a good idea, and the third factor is the support from the government. Because of the beneficial starting point that these companies have, and that being the protection of the environment through the popularity of bicycles, bike share phenomena are likely to grow in the future, attracting both customers and the government support. If more and more bike share companies like OFO and Mobike can start to address some of the problems that it faces in the process of their corporate operation, I think the bike share business is looking at a pretty bright future.